All right, welcome to the 4 o'clock work session for Tuesday, November 5th, 2013 for the Bowling Green Board of Commissioners. In our work session today, we've got 2 items, the first of which will be the quarterly report on the African American Museum. Mr. DeFebo?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think Dr. Long is here to make a report about the progress being made at the museum and to entertain any questions you have about that initiative. Dr. Long, do you want to come forward?
I believe I have to state my name, is that right?
Yes, sir.
My name is John Long. I'm chairman of the board of directors of the African American Museum, Bowling Green area. And I appreciate your being inviting me to be here this afternoon, honored Mr. Mayor and the honorable commissions and Mr. DeFebo and others. Thank you very, very much. This will be the 4th quarterly report from April the 1st to June the 30th, 2013. And the report of the 3rd quarter described the start the museum had made on having plans drawn for turning the structure at 301 State Street into museum space. The board is pleased to report that the plans were completed in May of 2013 and presented to the museum. The work was done by Mr. Anthony Bell of the Department of Architectural and Manufacturing Sciences, who prepared a PowerPoint presentation, which we will briefly view and then present a copy of the PowerPoint to the commission. So bear with me. I'm not the highest in the area of technology in the world, so this is a view of the museum from taken across the street corner diagonally. So you see the building, it's the whole building. It's the sort of beige. Is that the right color? I'm not good at color. The beige, perhaps, or the like as the color of the building. And now, and the young fellow, Mr. Bell, took a picture of the Shake Rag historical marker and then gave a little description of what his task was going to be and what the significance would be for this community. So he says, I was given the opportunity to work with the committee that is working to preserve what is known about the Shake Rag district by bringing an African American museum to this area. Now, he also took pictures of other structures in the area. So you see at the top left, the State Street Baptist Church, which of course has been in this area for some number of years, in fact, over a century. Pardon me, please. In fact, a century and 3/4, as a matter of fact. This is one of the oldest congregations in Kentucky, the oldest one being Pleasant Green in Lexington. And the building that you see here was constructed around 1901. There was a fire that took place on that corner about 1899, gutting the older structure, and in its place this structure was erected. About 1999, another fire took place which gutted the interior of this structure. This structure has the same footprint as the one that was built in 1901, but the interior is different in orientation and shape. Second thing you see is the State Street High School gym. State Street High School was the singular school for African Americans in this region. People had to be bused from other counties if they wanted to go to high school to go to State Street High. All that remains is the gymnasium. The actual structure was to the south of, to the south of the gymnasium, and that was raised, I think, sometime in the 1950s or a little later. Third, we show a building that is essentially sitting on the spot where the old high school actually sat, and it's a fabricated company, aluminum awnings or the like, aluminum products of some sort or the other. At any rate, this site was where the old State Street High School and its gymnasium were located. So he was taking pictures of what's immediately close to the museum, and of course, a couple of structures are important and historic. Other places in the community, the Southern Queen Hotel, which sits at the corner of 2nd and State Street, the Brunton Home, and the O.D. Porter Tourist Home. Well, O.D. Porter was a physician in town, and the Brunton family I do not happen to know, but if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, I don't see the address, but if I'm not mistaken, this was a building that served as a library for the African American community many, many years ago. Now, as a part of his research, he took interiors of different museums. These are probably taken from areas on the campus of Western Kentucky University. To the left, top left, that's probably taken down in the Mass Media and Technology Hall. They often have mount exhibits there, so he was getting ideas of how people use spaces to put up things for exhibits. Other things more detailed, some places inside the Kentucky Museum over on the backside of the campus, and a reflection, it looks like, of some of the walls and a fireplace of one of the log cabins on the campus. So he was taking pictures of what different museum spaces are like to get some ideas for how he would want to redesign the museum space at 301 State Street. Now, the bottom right side would be what would be considered the entranceway. In other words, that's that diagonal that you saw. If I can go back there. That angled flat surface in front, looking us directly in the face, that would be at the bottom right-hand side of our picture. Oh, yes, that's on the right way. Okay, so that's at the bottom right. So that would be the entranceway. And the cutouts that you see along the flat wall, which would be along State Street, those would be windows. Those are windows. Now you would enter, and you see there's a straight line and an angled thing. That would represent a reception desk. And then you go from there straight ahead, which would be going up on our plan, into an area that would be called something like a projection room. Then you could pass from that where you could view a short film or something would tell you about the museum or some other of the topics that we might be displaying or exhibiting in the museum. Then you could pass out of that into an area that would be a display hall or where things could be exhibited, exhibit hall. To the above that and on the right hand side would be a restroom, and then above that to its left would then be another little gallery. You could pass from that gallery going down now into yet another gallery, and then by making a left turn, go back into the area that would be behind, oh, I don't know what that means, that would be behind the reception desk, which would be the final gallery. Thank you.
Is the laser there too, Melissa?
It is.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Laser pen.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. And just twist it.
Just press the dot.
No, technology. Okay, so you would travel, this is the reception desk. You would travel from the entranceway this way into the projection room, through the projection room into one of the galleries, a restroom, another gallery there, or actually this would be more of an office space, excuse me. Then back into yet a third gallery area, and then finally behind the reception desk, the final gallery. This in here would be storage space, and this is where the HVAC is located. Okay. Again, our entrance is here. All right. Now you can see how he's color-coded it, so that you have the description, the lobby, projection room, restrooms, gallery, HVAC, office, storage, and so you can get a sense of that. And this is coming in the front door. This is the first gallery, the lobby reception area. And he's represented some kind of painting, looks like farmers, one sharpening a side, it looks like. But these are just representations that he's gotten in his computer to be able to put on a wall to show you, give you an impression of what it would be like to come in. So we come in, here's the reception desk, and we can go this way into the projection room. All right, this would be the projection room, the lower. This would be another view except with lighting. So you can see where things would be projected against the wall or on a screen of some sort, and some sorts of sitting arrangements here, benches of some sort, and then a way that you can go down, and it would be, I think there's a slight difference in height between one building and the next as far as the floor is concerned. So there'd be a ramp which would make it, and that's why we have the railing there, a ramp which would also make it handicap accessible. The door would be plenty wide, the opening would be plenty wide. And then that passes into the next gallery. Now you're in the second, you can see a little plan on the right. We've gone from the reception desk here into the projection area, and back here, right here, is a restroom. Going into the projection room, we pass from the projection room into the next gallery, where we are here, which he calls the sculpture room. Now that's his creation, but in any case, in his imagination, this is what it would be. Of course, this is a computer-generated figure. It's not a real person who's there. And then you can see, please excuse me, you can see that there's also a passageway that can lead you to the next place. Now, coming from the sculpture room into the area, you see the next gallery, which would be right here in the lower left-hand side. And here, things are displayed. He's got lighting up here. Now, actually, he doesn't design the lighting, but he was designing the space itself. But in other things that he's examined, this is the way that lighting is put up. And this is probably a reasonable way in which to do it. Now, remember, there are two adjoining spaces here. There's a 301 State Street, there's the structure that's on the corner, but there's also another, what's called a suite A and suite B. They're separated by this dividing wall. He's removed portions of the wall to make passageways or ways to get from one gallery to the next. So actually, right here is a wall. There's a wall there. This would be, one of them would be moved a bit, and then both of them would have opening ways made so that you can walk from one gallery to the next. And you can look back and see the person, where they've come from, and back into the, back over there would be where the reception area would be. This is materials being shown against the wall. Here another view of it. In fact, we are behind the reception desk. Yeah, you can see. We are behind the reception desk. You can see where the person is. You can see where we were in the previous gallery. So now we're behind the reception desk and the displays on the wall. And that takes us back to the front. So this is the plan that Mr. Bell prepared, and we're giving this to the City Commission, and it'll be a part of your records. You have a chance to see at least one idea of what the museum space will be like. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for Dr. Long?
Yeah.
Very nice. How are you coming with your exhibit collection?
Well, we're beginning. We have the offers of some material to come in. One of the well-known hairdressers in the area has passed, and her children have offered her materials, her equipment, to the museum. Which, of course, that was a thriving industry in this area. You know, hairdressers, that is to say. And that's an important part of the community. So we are negotiating for the reception of that material and getting ready to receive it. So we're starting on that. We already have one artifact which shows actually the sign for another beautician or hairdresser as our very first artifact. So that's something that would be well known. Ms. Alice Ray, that would be well known in the community. So we have that. And we have persons who have, at least by word of mouth, offered us other things. We have a person who has a collection of military materials that date back to the Korean War and Vietnam War, and he's offering that to us. So that's something else. So we have bits and pieces starting to come in now, and we'll be soliciting more.
I know one thing that I saw when I visited down there during one of their events, and that I really enjoyed were some of the older photographs.
Yes.
So keep those coming. I think that's
yes,
great.
we certainly will. Incidentally, some of the characters, I shouldn't say characters, some of the persons represented in those photographs were not known to the persons who had collected them. But when persons came on the celebration of Juneteenth, we had some older persons who came who knew who some of those persons were. We now have identifications for some of those persons in the photograph. So that opens up a whole new set of things for us, because now we can begin to tell the stories of living persons who were in the community, who had their picture taken in one situation or another. We can begin to tell where they lived, because it is possible to look at census records and find out where persons were living. We also can have access to maps which will show us where persons lived. And I have learned from the people in the geography department at Western that it is possible to have a large map display, and you can key the places on the map with census tracts and census records, and begin to know something about the families that live there. So all kinds of possibilities that open up in this way.
Dr. Long, I noticed you said you didn't want to use the character. I saw Joe's picture down there, and I think character is the right description for him. I'm not sure. Yes, sir.
Dr. Long, what's the management structure of the museum once it's completed? Will it be operated by a staff, open only on weekends, full-time? What is the, because it's designed to be a museum for the public.
Initially, it will be open on weekends, and as we get trained staff and volunteers to work with us, we'll have more times to have hours open. And as far as the administrative structure, we'll have a director, a person we will call our director, and we may give it a fancier title, but director is the basic term, who will oversee, have oversight of the museum and the staff.
Great.
And I'm seeing your schedule here, so you're planning to be open by about Juneteenth of next year, I guess?
Yes, we want to connect that with the Juneteenth celebration, so that'll be a double celebration for us.
All right, sir. Any other comments or questions? for Dr. Long?
One thing that I might add, and you probably already thought of this, but be sure and work with the other museums that we already have here.
Yes.
Because there's a natural tie-in, and y'all would be able to promote each other's product.
Yes. As a matter of fact, when Susan Tabor was still in town, she suggested if you visit one museum, you can give them a ticket or something like that for half price or something like that, or reduced price at the another museum. That's an encouragement for all the museums to work together, not only in Bowling Green, but also in the neighboring communities.
Absolutely.
Because Kentucky has quite a story to tell in all kinds of ways, both from the African American community as well as the white communities that are in this region. We all have something to contribute, and the point is we want to have at least our story a part of that whole presentation, because
Absolutely.
without that story, it's highly incomplete, very, very much incomplete.
Good job.
Thank you.
Come right on up.
Dr.
Can't say
Little.
it from back there, Dr. Little. Come on up here. We want to make sure everybody hears you.
Just a quick comment. I'm the Cassandra Little, and I'm the chair of the Education Committee. And from the pictures, even though they're representations, we also want you to visualize that there will be hands-on technology included in this. We hope to have outreach into the community with possibly what we call traveling suitcases or traveling trunk cases, because as we've gone to different trainings and things to find out how other museums are doing things that have walking tours and combine other ways that people can see, and it's not, everything is not just relegated to the building, that we do hope to have that type of outreach into the community and stimulate the minds of kids, because kids don't like to just look and read things. You know how that is.
Thank you. Thank you
Except
very
for the
much.
text messages.
And I see you've got another board member, Kathy
Yes,
Gum, with you
please.
today, too. Thanks for coming, Kathy. All right, anything else? Thank you so much for the update. We appreciate it.
All right, we appreciate so much the opportunity. Thank you so very, very much.
All right, our next item on the agenda is talking about our sidewalk program and any modifications that we might make tonight. Yes, sir.
One of our flagship programs in the city is the Sidewalk program. Since we enacted the policy in 2007, the city has been able to rehab or build 7.4 miles of sidewalk. This past year was a learning experience for us, and we're tuned into maybe some possible better ways of working with the neighborhood. So we took that serious, and we worked internally, and are here today to sunshine to you some changes in that policy, which we feel will help the program be more effective. The macro view of those changes are essentially to update the map every year, and Jeff will go over those. Second is to change some of the compensation we give to people for building a sidewalk in front of their home. And third is to make you the last approval station in the whole process. Instead of you being the first, then we go to the neighborhood, which kind of creates some issues. So we learned from that, and we have you now being the last after the public input. I think Jeff's going to more in depth go over these changes, maybe possibly Melissa too. I'm not sure.
I'll go
over part of it. Thank you, Mr. DeFevo. In 2007, August 2007, we came up with the new sidewalk program. The idea was to construct sidewalks where sidewalks didn't exist. So in other words, we're not doing a rehab, which we have traditionally done. This has been funded at $400,000 a year. Mr. DeFevo said we had 7 and some odd miles of sidewalk down, but we do have, totaling this year, what's under contract, a total of 8.35 miles. So over the years we've been doing this, we're tweaking processes, making them better, and we feel like from the design end, we've optimized those processes. We feel like we can do some optimization in the policy document that's before you tonight. I think it's been a very successful program. We've got to put a lot of infrastructure where it didn't exist. The goal of this was to make Bowling Green a more walkable community, and I think we are doing that mile at a time. So Melissa's going to go through details. We'll both be up here. We'll be able to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, and I'll highlight these briefly. I want to thank Jeff, and I know Mr. DeFebo and Emmett Wood were the original developers of this program. I've been involved most recently, and it really is an amazing process. It's very streamlined. We ran into, kind of the give and take with the neighborhood, of late, which we'll always have. But we hope tonight that we can lay out a process that helps both ends kind of get a better product in the end and make the process go smoother. Basically, we feel that the criteria-based selection has provided for very good results. We currently have, so we don't propose to make any changes to that process today. We have approximately 170 locations that have been requested for sidewalk. That could be, a block here, block there, whole projects, but in essence, there's 170 separate projects that we prioritize this current year. We do this prioritization annually, and what we do is we look at the projects and requests that came in from the previous year, add them to the system, and run that prioritization another time. One note, and you guys are aware, we have changed since the onset of this program, is we do not consider requests where sidewalks already exist. So if there's already a sidewalk on one side of the road, we don't address that or incorporate that request into the system normally. There are some exceptions, and those exceptions are due to maybe it's a busy, highly traveled roadway, a lot of traffic, a lot of speed, higher speeds, or land use. Maybe both sides of the road really have a lot of pedestrian traffic, and so you really need the sidewalk on both sides. So we won't say we won't ever consider it, but most of the time, if there is sidewalk present, we won't take that request. Here, real briefly, are some projects of recent, pictures of projects we've completed recently. Top right, that's Cabell Drive. That's a standard 5-foot walk with a utility strip, which is our typical cross-section. A lot of times the residents prefer to not have the utility strip, and we often use that when there's limited space in the right-of-way to use. That's along Collette Lane that we did just last year, and I can say from firsthand experience that gets used heavily each and every school day. So, and then of course we incorporate handicap ramps at all of our locations. Most of the time they're either non-existent or old and need to be upgraded to the new ADA standards. Real briefly, the proposed revisions that we have incorporated into the document that you have in front of you, we've showed those with strikeouts for what we're planning to remove and underlines what we want to add. We did some minor revisions to the wording to make it clearer. Again, we don't propose any revisions to the scoring technique or the project qualification. Currently, we get requests from different angles. It may come from a citizen call directly. It may come through neighborhood community services. We may find a project that we feel warrants it that's not on the list. We get calls from the board. So we get all those in the process, and at the beginning of the fiscal year, we prioritize those. The things that we want to focus in on, as Mr. DeFebo mentioned, is the project map and how we maintain that, some minor changes to the reimbursement schedule, and then, of course, the neighborhood coordination. The project map is, I think in the original policy, they intended, when it described the map, if you read what it said before, was how did we create this map from the beginning. How do we get projects on that list from the get-go, and how do we start the process? We found over the past 6 years that it's best to just maintain that map online, show all the projects, highlight the streets that have those projects with them, and then, and the one out there now needs to be updated with this year's projects, but highlight what is planned for the current year. And I think I'll show you, this is an example. Now they can zoom in, you know, it's available to citizens. We can present this each year with our project list that we present to you all. And it'll be available to public. I will note that it is a hard map to print and provide because it's such a huge scale to be able to see it. It would have to be in several pieces. So the intent is to provide it electronically, but it's available to the public. The second area that we revised, and it's very brief, and I'll explain why we decided to take these components out. We decided to remove the $100 inconvenience payment. Mailboxes on right-of-way, obviously, are most of the time they are affected. We try to go around the larger mailboxes. We have found that we're running into mailboxes that are older. It's more trouble than it's worth to take them down and put them back. What we've done of late is provided this mailbox here and put them in place and just replace their old ones. So in lieu of providing this $100 inconvenience payment, we're just providing them a new mailbox. Now we do realize not everybody wants this mailbox, and this is our standard. So we do give them the option, you know, to decline it and keep theirs, and in that case we'll put theirs back. Or sometimes we can avoid it altogether. So that is one change we've made. The other is the irrigation and sprinkling systems. Most of the time if people have these, they are in right of way because they want to make sure that grass up near the road gets watered just like the rest of the yard. So we haven't run into this too much, but when we do, it's just incidental to our process. We'll fix it. Our contractors, they're there. We can get it up and running fairly quickly. So we took that inconvenience payment out. Yes?
I was going to ask you, both of those seem to be, rather than giving them money and telling them to move it, we're just moving it for them. Is that correct?
Right, because we are actually solving the problem. Unlike, for instance, landscape that's on right of way. We're not giving them money to replace it because it's on right of way, but we're giving them kind of an inconvenience payment. In this case, we're actually putting it back for them, or in this case, replacing it with a whole nother. And in a lot of cases, you know, this is much nicer than what was there. I know people take pride in some of their mailboxes. They match their homes. In those cases, if they want to keep them, that's fine. But this is the first option, is to present them with a new mailbox. So I know in Dennis and Catherine back in that area, that whole street has brand new ones. On Morgantown Road, while it wasn't part of this program, we put a lot of new mailboxes out there, which I think improved the looks of that corridor. Yes?
In relation to the sprinkling systems that one may have, why do we have the grass strip near the curb with our sidewalks? Why do we not just carry the concrete on out to the curb?
Well, it's originally a utility strip, and that's just what it was considered for a while. There could be utilities within that area. It provides an extra buffer from the traffic to the pedestrian. A lot of times, I know from experience of downtown trying to work in handicap ramps, the more distance you have from your sidewalk to the curb, the better ramp that you can fit in, make ADA compliant. It's not necessarily. Utilities are everywhere under the road and under the sidewalk, so it's not necessary for that reason. Now, a lot of times there are utility poles within that region. Sure. And we'd rather them be in an area where people are not traveling, you know, so as to avoid those. So we kind of, and we'll get into that when we're back and forth with the neighborhood. We'll present what we feel should be done, but we give them that option. And we found that in the past. A lot of people want the strip, some people don't want the strip, and it really comes back to what works best from a design and constructability standpoint. So,
but the owner has got to keep the strip cut.
Most of the time, yes, the owner does mow that, and that's what we hear is, I don't want to mow that 2-foot strip in front of my house. So it's some people like it, some people don't.
Even though people are mowing it without a sidewalk being there now.
Right. If there's no sidewalk there, they're mowing the 5 feet plus the 2 feet, so which is a typical width of our sidewalk. I see both sides, and I think some designs fit better in some neighborhoods and others fit better. Like the example of Collett Lane, we put the, let me see if I can get back to it. We just put this right here without one because we were limited with this fence. And oftentimes that is the case. We run into lots of fences and shrub lines that we don't want to, impact it. We try our best not to impact things, whether they're right away or not right away. But this worked in this area, and I thought it turned out nice.
Yeah, and without that strip, the decorative signposts there.
Right, and that's another thing, we can put the signs in the concrete. We do that a lot, but I just think when you have, in my opinion, and you have a little more space removing you from the traffic. So Russellville Road, for instance, we just built a sidewalk along Russellville Road. I would feel safer the further away, from that traffic that I was. So those things come into play when we meet with the neighborhood and at the onset and kind of gauge feedback on what they would like in front of their house. All right. So that's the only two things that we, and again, the inconvenience payment are for items that are within public right-of-way that we're having to move. This is not related to items that are on their private property that we may impact because we have to get off of right-of-way. Those kind of reimbursements are replacement value. So if we have to take some landscape or a tree that's on their property, it's not an inconvenience payment, it's actually a replacement payment.
The mailboxes, do we keep those in inventory? Because
the new ones?
yeah.
We usually just order those project per project based on how many people decide to take those. I know we ordered quite a few for Old Morgantown Road. We had a few left over. So we do have some here and there that we have on hand. But they have the slot for if they take the paper, there's a back access to those so people don't have to step around and get into traffic too. So. By and large, the neighborhood coordination portion of the policy, we didn't really have a laid out policy for how we coordinate. We just conducted public meetings, and we conducted those meetings after your authorization for the projects. So we're changing that a little and laying this out a little bit more detailed in order to have an initial mailing. After we prioritize our projects at the start of each fiscal year, we have an initial mailing to those affected neighborhoods saying, you've been selected. The sidewalk is going to be on this side of the road. Give them some general information on our design, typically 5-foot walks. Explain our compensation and reimbursement schedules. Obviously, we won't have details on what we owe them, but we explain how we do that. And then we invite them to a public meeting. Unless it's a small group of people, we probably would hold a public meeting so that we can lay out some things. Let's go on this way. So like I said, the mailing will go out with kind of the general information, kind of getting them knowledgeable of our process, because a lot of people don't even know we have this program in place. So we kind of explain that up front. We invite them to some form of outreach. A public meeting is usually how we've done it in the past. We have typically what we show is an aerial, because we've not done survey, we've not done design at this point. We show which side of the road it'll be on. Kind of gives them, people are really amazed at the aerials and they love to look at, their properties, and they can kind of see, how deep into their yards it goes, if it even gets off right away. They kind of have an idea about that. And it's at that point that they can give us feedback on, we're not for the project. Maybe that they don't want the sidewalk. Maybe they want it on the other side, utility strip or no utility strip. And we're there to answer those questions. And it's at this point that we kind of gauge each area on how they feel, special requests. We've had a lot of meetings where we've had very low attendance. So if we have to go out and do door hangers to take that extra step, we're going to try to make every effort we can to reach these people before we come to you all. I think that just makes it easier, keeps us from having to back up and redo some things. So once we've had that meeting, we invite them to the next, there's some more things we would provide. Basically, our cross-section, we've provided this little graphic of how the sidewalk would look, and there's the right-of-way line, and explain, if you've got landscape in the right-of-way, here's how we typically pay you for that inconvenience of removing that. We always have pictures of previous projects to show them what things look like, or oftentimes we'll say, well, go down Lehman Avenue and look at how we did that one, to give them a better idea. And finally, we'll tell them, we plan to bring our projects to the board for your consensus and support, and invite them to the working session. And our intent is, at this point, is to have as much feedback from the neighborhood as we can before we pass it to you guys to say, okay, move forward. It's at that time they can come forward and talk about what they would rather see, or any, things that they brought up in the public meetings. But it's at that time at the Board of Commission, which is what we typically have. We just typically have that at the onset before we meet with the neighborhoods. We want to get the okay from you all to move to survey and design. And once we have a survey and design, which is by far the most involved part of the process for our department, we'll have one final outreach effort to that neighborhood, whether it be a meeting or one-on-one, to show them exactly where that sidewalk falls, what private property, if any, it affects, and what type of land we might have to purchase through easement or temporary easement to build the sidewalk. And we'll also have a value, a compensation value for them at that time. That is the main points that we have changed. And like I said, we never really laid out how we would reach out to the neighborhood. And I think this process kind of gets a lot of feedback before we get to the point where we're standing up here and having you guys agree that these are the proper locations for the sidewalk.
Yes, sir.
The other idea we want to talk to you about at our January retreat is the idea of bifurcating the money, allocating about 90% toward the prioritized projects, the system, then see if you want to have like 10% of the money towards special needs. Okay, you might have some special needs that never makes it to the criteria. Now you would decide what you want to do with a limited amount of money. So what's 10% of 400K? 40,000? I mean, that might be able to do one special need a year, but it allow right now that special need would never make it. We didn't want to include that today. We weren't sure if you were open to that, and we haven't come up with the rules of engagement for that. But we wanted to talk to you about that in January. I don't know if you're open to that. It seems to be a niche need in the community, because a number of you have approached us with niche needs that just don't make the system, and we don't want to go away from the system because that makes almost everyone subject to equality of the rule. But again, there's special needs that don't get addressed if we don't put money aside.
Is there a high percentage of people that do not realize that their shrubbery or other things are in the right of way?
I'm guessing there are, but Jeff can.
Yes, that has been the case. And I don't know that a property owner would necessarily know that unless they've done a lot of, buying property, selling property, and know the ins and outs of that. And, so it depends on how knowledgeable somebody is about the piece of property they own. One thing we always have to talk to people is, well, from the center line, it's back about 25 feet. If it's a 50-foot right-of-way, generally we're splitting from the center line of the road. We're coming back into the property some 12 or 13 feet. Typically, that's not the case in every location, and it varies. The fact that it does varies creates problems and maybe a lack of knowledge.
We were, we have that program, Mythbusters. We were thinking about dedicating one of the programs to that, to talk about this program and how the right-of-ways lay out and the whole bit. That was the logic behind the inconvenience fee, is to basically take the temper off of the losing a bush that's been there for decades that wasn't supposed to be there in the first place.
Or a sycamore tree right on the corner.
And Joe, we also have a right-of-way brochure that we've developed as a public education tool, so people can read a little more about that and determine how they would find out what their right-of-way is, where's their line, where's the right-of-way.
In our mind, this sidewalk program and the stormwater program are probably the two best things we do for the citizens, other than paving roads. And
may I bring up a subject that I probably haven't approached you with, and it's called a sidewalk at Greenwood High School.
Well,
I'm being
I've never heard of
facetious
that.
because I've warned Jeff out about that. I think maybe that may fall into a special needs. However, what I'm concerned about on that one is, I think I mentioned it to you, is your scoring technique. That sidewalk, one, it's next to a school, which seems like that it should really raise it high. But we've talked about the scoring. Mm-hmm. And then you said it doesn't fill a gap. And I think that's where I'm having a problem.
Okay.
Because it does fill a gap from the city limits to the Scottsville Road one. And it seems like that's where the scoring is skewed just a little bit, because it appears, and until I started looking into it and we actually started talking, we went out there and looked at it, we tried to get the county involved and maybe partnering with us on that. That didn't pan out. But it seems like in the scoring, and I don't have a problem with the system, but it seems like there's a scoring issue that sidewalk would fill a gap. Because it's from the city limits to Scottsville Road.
Right.
And currently, and I'll let you respond, but currently it's not getting points for that, therefore it's lower on the list and probably won't be completed unless something miraculous happens.
Okay. There's probably only a handful at best of those that would go to city limits or end of maintenance. This one does. It goes to private property, actually.
Right.
So in the inception of the program, we were trying to take these little small gaps where we might have sidewalk on one side and sidewalk on another side, and by a small investment, open up the sidewalk network to a large magnitude. So we're very limited on situations like this. I think the potential thing we may want to discuss helps fit those needs for those
The special needs.
those maybe odd cases. And I agree with you, this is an odd case in how the scoring worked out. It did get points for being next to a school, without a doubt, but in the gap score, you're absolutely right, it did not. But I think we may be able to address items like that in the future if that's something.
And I appreciate Mr. DeFebo and you. We had a meeting with folks at the school, the school resource officer, and appreciate that, and he did too. But again, it seems like that in your scoring, that it indeed does fill a gap.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
The sidewalk that is intended to be built, does it meet another actual sidewalk, or does it end in space? That Bill's talking about.
The one, this one would end in space.
See, that's not, doesn't fill a gap.
No. It would end at the corner of Scottsville Road and Cypress.
Is there a
Park.
sidewalk there?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Oh.
but I'm saying at the end of Cypress Wood, that
Yeah.
it ends.
But
That's
that would-
assuming we build all of Cypress Wood.
Well, Cypress Wood is private. So.
We don't know what you're talking about.
Okay,
No, I don't either.
let me. I'm not sure. There is a Richard Kirby, who's a school resource officer, he's brought it to a lot of people's attention over the last couple of years, but I got involved in it sometime, I guess it was last year, Jeff. I don't know when we first started talking about it, but there's children who walk over from the mobile home park to Greenwood High School, and he's documented issues with the kids having to walk out in the road with some water standing in the road, and I think you all made some modifications on some of the water.
Yes, sir.
But I became interested in it because, again, it was, and I knew what our system was, but I became interested because it never seemed like it was going to get to the point of being built. And so when we looked into it more, part of the sidewalk that comes around Scottsville Road by the nursing home, I don't even know what that's, Greenwood Rehabilitation Center. It stops there. There's no sidewalk down to where the city owns the property. Greenwood High School or the Board of Education owns the property at a certain point on Cypress Wood Way. Am I right, Jeff?
Yes. We were talking about right away previous. So this will be an example where city right-of-way comes into, can you turn the aerials on? So again, this is a city-maintained road. There, we'll have the aerials up in just a second. There is sidewalk here. So if we continued from that point to here,
Say that again, I'm lost.
okay, there is a sidewalk along Scottsville Road
Okay.
that was constructed with the widening. If a sidewalk went in from here, and Officer Kirby is requesting at this location, it could go further. We're tying to one sidewalk, but not on the other end.
Yep.
So, and you know, when we developed the program originally, I don't think this was anticipated. The idea was, let's pick out the small gaps, and by small capital funds, we expand the network.
I guess what I'm saying, Jeff, is that the rules, I mean, and what Kevin said about making sure the integrity of the rules are kept, unless we do this special needs, and that might change the rules a little bit. But it seems like that the rules, if they were applied, in my mind, the right way, then that does fill a gap in our sidewalks inside the city limits, even though one end stops at somebody else's property. In that we could not build on their property, would not want to build on their property, but it seems like that we would then take a sidewalk from next to Greenwood High School that would go all the way to Scottsville Road, and I don't know where it ends there. I'm sure at the other city limits.
Can you take off the layer that has the streets on it so I can see it a little better?
Maybe in just a second here. Street center line layer.
Transportation info. Yeah. Okay, now I see the sidewalk along Scottsville Road. Where is it you're wanting to do it?
Okay, the request from Officer Kirby was to fill in this little piece right here.
Is there a sidewalk this way, south?
There is no sidewalk
So it's
on Cypress.
It's on
So where's it
space
going?
on one end.
Where's it going to go?
From Scottsville Road
Scottsville
back
Road
to,
down to the end of the city limits.
yeah, back to where the city limits are.
Here we go.
We had
This
talked-
is a little better. So sidewalk ends right here.
There's no sidewalk on the back end to connect to.
Right.
No, there is not.
So it doesn't fill a gap
If they
between
don't
the
go in
two.
through the parking lot there, they could.
No, it would be on this, it would be on the nursing, the rehabilitation side of the street. Wouldn't be on the other side.
Yeah, but where's it going? I mean, aren't they just going across the parking lot into the school?
No, they're coming from the mobile home park up the other way.
We have several students that I think come through this church parking lot.
Oh.
They come out
They come
here,
up that
so
So they don't want to go up
the-
Scottsville Road and come down. They
Correct.
want to take a shortcut. I get
the
that. I get it.
request is to put sidewalk in.
And when we first started talking about it, we had discussed that short section, and then I think even at one time we had the discussion if we were going to do it the correct way, then it would need to be the whole length. But again, this is an example of it's by a school. In my mind, it fills a gap, but now I know that obviously staff, the way you all interpret it, will probably take precedence, obviously, over the way I interpret it, and that's okay. But I just want to say that I think that may be one fallacy of the program, that it doesn't score it fairly.
Well, and I see your point. You and I have talked about this quite a bit, and I understand the need. I think we may be able to come up with a means of handling these. I see this spur, if you will, limited in what we have proposed.
And I probably wouldn't think a lot of it if it wasn't right next to a school.
Understand.
That to me, because we make an effort, or we have made efforts with other schools to make sure that the sidewalks were in, and again, it may fit the criteria different, but I just wanted to raise that again as what I see as a flaw in the scoring system. I agree with having a scoring system like that, But anyway,
And-
that's my 2 cents.
And I think the scoring system's done fairly well. I agree with you. This is a unique situation. So.
Who uses the Scottsville Road sidewalk? Are there any spurs leading up to that?
This,
That's State
Yes.
Highway. They built it whenever
They built it,
yeah.
okay.
there is one small area down here where Greenway comes out. I see people walking on it fairly regularly.
Well, like you say, if it came up as a special project, and even if it was a short section that was built in there that didn't connect on either end, just to take care of those kids, that might be something that might.
And I think we talked about that. That would be about, what, 25,000 is what you'd estimated? If we did not do the complete
For the segmented
sidewalk,
piece,
but
yes,
just
sir.
the small incremental like Rick's talking about.
If you did it on the school side, you could connect those two parking lots for them.
That would solve the problem if the school would build a sidewalk, but they're not interested, right, Bill?
Well, after we found out that the county was not able or interested, not able, I guess, to help us with it, I just asked Richard at that time to withdraw the request of the city because, again, I was going under the impression that unless we had some other funds that it would not receive enough points to elevate it up to being fixed, and probably would not have brought it up in a forum like this had we not been talking about the scoring points. And again, it seems like it meets the criteria to fill a gap, and I think your all's interpretation, just to be very candid, is the flaw because it does fill a gap. Is the only thing. But that's mine.
Commissioner Hill, one other sidewalk Melissa reminded me of is the new road that we put in going back to Gander Mountain, Bluegrass Farms. So that is one that ties in. It comes near right at high school property there.
So are there any sidewalks, because aren't there 2 schools back there? Is it there Greenwood and is it
Yes.
Drake's?
Yeah.
So are there any sidewalks that those school students can use to get to Scottsville Road sidewalk?
There's some internal network in here, but they could go out Bluegrass Farms.
Okay.
Is the sidewalk that access.
How many people use sidewalks anymore for high school?
The only request we've
Or
had here
walkers from
was,
this
yeah,
particular trailer
was from the trailer park
And I think as we, as a city, provide more sidewalks and Greenway provides more, I think more people obviously will be walking if those sidewalks were made available. But let me not confuse. I think that you all are doing a good job with running the program. I'm excited about the program. But again, it is my opinion that it's a flaw in the way that you all scored this particular project. There's a reason it hasn't moved up to be fixed.
And again, I realize that this is a unique data piece in the vast majority of the projects.
All right. Anything else?
I have
Yes,
one more
ma'am.
question. You talked about inconvenience fees. What's
Yes.
the highest inconvenience fee we've paid?
And some, I'm not sure.
And the reason I'm asking, so I can understand this in my mind, we are paying a property owner, goes back to what Joe was saying, for something that was planted or constructed in the city's right-of-way that shouldn't have been there in the first place. So we're taking taxpayers' dollars to pay these citizens for messing up, planting something or building something they shouldn't have.
That was the request at the time, and commissioners that had gone through this was a means of, okay, it's there. We're not paying the full value of the item. We're paying a fraction, and that was the desire of the commission at the time.
And I'm just having a hard time that we're paying for something that shouldn't be there in the first place.
What we were recognizing at that, I think Jill and I were on there, what we were recognizing is the individual property owner's effort to keep their property looking nice and beautifying the community, and here we come and tear out what they've done, and it was just a way to help them restart the process that they were. But yeah, we had that discussion at that time.
But it
too.
shouldn't have been built there. Am I
Right.
thinking that?
Yeah, you're right. That's one of the things I was, if we put concrete all the way out, there's nothing going to be put there, especially pertaining to a sidewalk. We're going to continue to have, I guess, people planning things after we leave, I guess, still over in the right of way, on the corner of the lot and so on. But we can eliminate some of the things by not having that strip.
Well, and generally that space is small. People could put something in, yes, sir, they could. But it's kind of limited what they could do. You've got to fit it within a 2-foot spot. Number two is, okay, we do get a pedestrian zone away from traffic, but that would be 2 extra foot of concrete times the length of the project that we would have to purchase as well.
If I could add, the inconvenience fee, we didn't want to put you in the position of having one homeowner who was adamant that they didn't want a sidewalk, and because of some 100-year-old bush are going to stop the whole neighborhood or create all this angst about a sidewalk. We've put 7,400 feet of sidewalk in using this system, and it's worked out pretty good. And without that kind of system, that little extra help, people could harden up and force you to condemn just for a little piece to serve the whole neighborhood, and it seemed a good trade-off. That's why we called it convenience fee. You can give it another term. And, Bruce and others at the time justified it, as a way of making the program, enabled the program, and to thank them for taking care of that property, and let's move on. Don't do it again.
But is there anything written in here on that little small utility strip or whatever that they don't plant some kind of plant that goes over on our sidewalks, like a vine or something? I've seen that on some sidewalks.
We have obstruction to right-of-way language. I'm sure we have something similar on the sidewalks. We'd have to go in city code. I know we have something to that effect.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions? Good discussion.
Good job.
Thank you very much. Anything else on the sidewalk
I think
program?
Commissioner Hill had something under commission initiatives. Do you want to discuss?
do.
I'll leave it to you,
Yes.
and I can assist where necessary.
Yes, thank you. If you will, Mr. DeFebo, since it is leaf season,
Right.
I've received some complaints from citizens about leaves being in the streets. And if someone can explain to our citizens our protocol for leaf pickup and what citizens should do with their leaves.
I could logically give you the answer, but I think it'd be probably more appropriate for Jeff, who deals with this every day, to give you the correct answer. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, Jeff?
Leaf season, big time of the year. We have crews out covering the city, and there's a few rules that we'd like to ask citizens to abide by. We have a copy of our loose leaf pickup guidelines on our website, and a few of the items that are of major importance to us is not sweeping the leaves out into the street. That causes a potential safety issue. If the leaves get wet, it becomes very slick. Second, if they're out in a lane of traffic, cars having to move over, and then the potential for hitting another car. So again, we ask that they are raked to the curb, and so they could be picked up later. We also ask that they're not put over drainage structures, obstructing fire hydrants, and also sticks, rocks, and stuff like that that might be in the leaf pile. We ask that those are not included, the reason being that could damage machinery as well as impact the safety of the employees and passerbys. If we do have some of those reasons why we cannot pick them up, we'll put a door hanger on, explain the reason why. And so the biggest thing is just the placement of them and what's in there. They need to be solely leaves. We've had several efforts where we try to get this information out. We've talked to the paper. We do have this on our website, so maybe we could bring some more attention to that. We also have a mailer that goes out, and we state make sure your leaves are raked to the curb before the first scheduled pickup date. So I think we've done a few measures to try to get that word out, and I appreciate the ability to talk about this tonight. Maybe that helps get the word out as well.
Can I ask a question? I don't want to go to motive, but what would be the reason why a person would rake them to the street rather than leave them on the dividing line between the curb and their property? Does it kill their grass if they have it there for a period of time?
It could damage the grass if it sits there for a long while, but it will come back. It will be temporary. Secondly, you know, it makes your yard look smaller maybe. I don't know. I'm trying to think about the psychology of why that would go out. You know, I'm getting my yard cleaned off. So, and it does cause us a problem in the motorist problem.
Kevin is right. I'm in mine on Highland, put it out to the curb, and if I get industrious and do it earlier than what maybe the schedule calls for and leaves them out there, the grass will seem like it's died. It's come back every year. It's not been a problem.
I guess Melinda raises a good point, and it caused us some pause, and we scrambled the system to address you tonight. The issue would be, do we want to either deny service or someone who does that, or use a code enforcement penalty for people who do that? Is that the kind of thing we can, in the end, if we want to really enforce that, we either have to deny service, which means that's going to stay there on the road, or Brent's going to have to cite them, and then we go through the code process. I don't know what you all wanted to do. We'll try the education route, but in the end, if we really want to enforce.
Well, Katie may be able to put it in.
Yeah.
Yes.
She covered it.
Well, a lot of people don't understand too that you can't mix leaves and sticks and limbs and everything else because they're not. It's different equipment that picks those up. So.
Yes, ma'am.
What concerns me, if you have a neighborhood without sidewalks, I live in one of those, and if you have both neighbors that rake their leaves to the road, across from each other, your road is really narrow. It's now a one-lane road. And if you're walking at night, you can't see the leaves. If it's not a street light, you can slip, you can fall, and you're right in there with the traffic.
Just imagine if somebody had a rock or something in that pile of leaves on the road. You know, it could be a safety issue. So it's something we need to request that's remedied.
I don't know that, I'm sure the grass killing is one of the issues, but our equipment will reach over the utility strip and the sidewalk. The vacuum has a long enough hose to suck all that up. But I think I believe, as I remember correctly, part of the LEAF program was that it meets some of our standards in stormwater quality, and that we can count those funds towards the necessary amount that we spend, because we take up the leaves to keep them out of the stormwater system. When they get clogged up, then places flood. So for serious violators, I don't know that I have any problem if it's a violation to address that, but that's just me. I'm only 20% up here.
I was going to say, it's an excellent service
Yeah.
for a lot of good reasons, but it's an excellent service to be able to do that and have the city come by and get it, talk with people in other communities, and they just can't believe that's. May I ask one more question, though? If they're out of leaf season and you haven't started picking up, is there a provision where you can call and they'll actually come to your house? And if that's true, do the leaves have to be bagged then? How does that? I don't know.
We start early in the season, and this is a trial run for us. It's on call the first couple weeks, and I don't recall the dates. What we're doing, somebody has their leaves raked. We're testing the equipment. We're making sure everything works when we go into production mode.
So they don't have to be bagged then either. If they call you, you'll come out and vacuum them up.
There's like a late season. For example, I have a pin oak on mine. My neighbor doesn't have a pin oak. His leaves are already on the ground. Mine won't fall for another 3 weeks. So there's 2 different dates, right?
Yeah, and there is a provision for bagging. I'm trying to find that in the policy.
I think you picked them up nearly till Christmas, if I'm
Yeah,
not mistaken.
there's
We-
2 or 3 days.
Yeah, we
Per
go
area.
on.
There was something in the mailing that said bag them, if you miss your dates, to bag them, and Scott Waste will pick them up.
Yeah, they will be picked up by that means. So, so there's a couple different ways. If you do bag them, they won't blow out on the street, whatever. So a citizen could bag those. Part of the idea of doing that is landfill space. You know, we're putting this volume of leaves in the landfill. So that option does exist, though, if somebody does choose to do that. Of course, we're making a beneficial product out of this. We do have stormwater credits, if you will, that we gain from this program. One of the biggest things that I see, talking about the service, and I talk to different peoples in different public works departments, you know, how do you do this? That conversation, we always have that, and they have problems with flooding and stuff like that, leaves plugging up storm drains, and there's nowhere for the water to go, so it will plug one up in a heartbeat.
Bobby Phelps just texted me, a legal text, by the way. We pick up through January to clean up, and for those citizens that may have not got their stuff out in time. Nice technology, huh?
Well, there you go.
There you go. Thank you, Bobby.
So we do go through, and I just found in my notes the day we do go to January 1st. We're in Zone 9 now, and we schedule that. We have that on the city calendar. There's also a tool where you can put in your address, and that'll tell you which zone you're in. So.
That's a great service.
I'd like to do a gung-ho significant education thing starting next year, doing with the Mythbusters, following it up, making sure people understand we're not going to do it. We don't want you to put them out on the street. Knowing we're always going to have someone who tests us, and we have to test back, right? But I'm sure you want that to be rare, right? We don't want to get in this constant war with our citizens over stuff. But is that okay? Is that a decent approach?
Great. Thank you.
All right. Any other policy initiatives? We'll get the order. All right. We'll return at 7 o'clock for our regular session. Thank you for tuning in.